Westbound 4500 south at 3rd West. Found your dream house, but not your dream rate? Make your purchase with a home loan from Cyprus Credit Union. Refinance within 12 months if rates drop, and we'll take care of the refinancing fees. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather mostly sunny today. Clouds are moving in tomorrow, and there's a chance of thunderstorms on Wednesday. High today 87, 82 tomorrow. Right now 81 degrees. It's sunny at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
We often say on this show that which we choose to ignore or forget, our children may never know. And what our children do not know, our grandchildren are unlikely to possess. And today, of course, marks the 22nd anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attack that changed the world forever. How do we properly reflect on that day? What are the principles that we should learn from that day? And most important, how do we frame this day for those who have no memory of the day? And what will that mean for the country and for the world moving forward? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
I want to get into a couple of different angles as we commemorate the 22nd anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attack. Of course, the World Trade Towers that came down, Flight 93 over Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and, of course, what happened at the Pentagon. And as we look back at those, I want to frame it in just a little different way. I actually want to go to a speech that former President George W. Bush gave there in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, on September 11th, honoring the 20th anniversary. So this was 2 years ago, 2021. He delivered an address there marking that day. And there are some important principles that the former president hit that I think are significant in terms of where we are today, and more importantly, how we help frame this for the young people who have no memory of 9/11, who don't have a perspective in terms of what things were like before and what things were like immediately following. And so take a listen to this. Again, this is former President George W. Bush as he spoke honoring those on Flight 93 at the National Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, to honor 9/11.
For those too young to recall that clear September day, it is hard to describe the mix of feelings we experienced. There was horror at the scale of destruction and awe at the bravery and kindness that rose to meet it. There was shock at the audacity of evil and gratitude for the heroism and decency that opposed it. In the sacrifice of the first responders, in the mutual aid of strangers, in the solidarity of grief and grace, the actions of an enemy revealed the spirit of a people, and we were proud of our wounded nation. We saw that Americans were vulnerable, but not fragile, that they possess a core of strength that survives the worst that life can bring. We learned that bravery is more common than we imagined, emerging with sudden splendor in the face of death. We vividly felt how every hour with our loved ones was a temporary and holy gift, and we found that even the longest days end.
So truly, the longest days do end, and that's an important thing in our nation's history, that we have had long days, we've had dark days, difficult times, but those days do end, because that's how it goes, because it's against the laws of nature that a storm lasts forever. It comes, it goes, and then it moves on, and so do we. I think the former president hit it right in terms of that incredible mix that many of us experienced on that day as we saw the shock and horror as we looked at things that were truly evil, the amazement we had of the bravery and those that were willing to run into those buildings, that were running into harm's way, not away from it. As always, our first responders, our police officers, our firefighters, our medical personnel, who do that on a regular basis, but they did it in a most extraordinary way, I think, on 9/11. And those are principles, again, that we have to come back to. So often in this rapid fire world that we live in, we're always on to the next thing. And sometimes we have to learn to just stop for a minute, to just sit with it for a minute. And sometimes I worry that we rush along at such a quick pace that even in the face of some real challenging things, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's a man-made calamity, a shooting, a mass shooting of some sort, or something else that's taken place in the world, we have to learn to just slow it down a little bit and do exactly what the former president described, to look in awe and wonder at the horror and at evil. What does that look like and feel like? Can we have gratitude for the service rendered, and to recognize what it took to be a helper that day, to make a difference? That we can have solidarity. I think that was one of the most extraordinary things of coming out of 9/11 was the solidarity that comes from grief and grace. Again, something that I think unites the nation often, but something that we often rush past or rush through in order to get on to next. I think the lesson of 9/11 is to just sit with it for a minute, to just be with it for a minute, rather than instantly analyze it and then move on to whatever the next thing is, or looking for the next headline. Bravery is far more common than we think it is. We see it all around us, and not just on big days like 9/11. We see it every day in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and here throughout the state as people do extraordinary things. Most far beyond the lights and cameras and microphones. Most never get posted on social media or make it into a headline. But that's what heroism really looks like. That's what bravery looks like. It was interesting today, Senator Mitt Romney released a video commemorating the anniversary, and he spoke of an interesting connection. Of course, he was in the middle of the preparations for the Salt Lake City Olympics in 2002, which followed that following year after the tragedy. And, of course, one of the most stirring scenes, I think, in any Olympic Games ever in the history of the Olympic movement was when that flag that flew above the World Trade Center on 9/11 was brought into Rice-Eccles Stadium, the Olympic Stadium, on that night. And take a listen to what Senator Romney had to say. Again, more principles for us to reflect on and to act on.
At the opening of the Olympic Games, it's tradition to have a flag raising. We had a very unusual flag. It was an American flag that had flown above the World Trade Center on 9/11. The athletes brought the flag in, stopped in front of the Tabernacle Choir, and they began to perform the national anthem. I don't imagine there was a dry eye there as people contemplated the words that were sung and that flag in our presence. And then the choir did something unusual. They sang a version of the national anthem where you repeat the last line. And this time is a reprise with much greater volume and at a higher level of orchestration. And the words, "Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave," or "The land of the free and the home of the brave," were sung a second time. And a gust of wind blew into the flag. And one of the athletes, Derek Parra, who was one of those holding the flag, said for him it was as if the soul of all those that had fought and died for America had just blown into that flag. So many people lost their lives around the world. First responders who rushed into the building to help people get out of the building lost their lives. The sacrifice was overwhelming, and our flag, for me at that moment, was a symbol of the great sacrifice of those who have always bled and died for our freedom.
As Utah Senator Mitt Romney on his social media today commemorating this day of remembrance, 9/11, and those Olympic moments were very stirring. But as Senator Romney said, I think the principle there is that our flag, it does encapsulate all those who have gone before, all those who have fought and died for freedom, those who have sacrificed much to bring forth this nation conceived in liberty. There are so many things for us that we should be remembering as we go through this day and this important anniversary. We're waiting. The president is expected to be landing in Alaska. We'll be giving a few brief remarks there around 9/11 today. Will be the first time we have not had a United States president either at the Pentagon or in Pennsylvania or at the site in New York City of the World Trade Centers. So that will be an interesting thing to have the president in a different space to commemorate this day. You may remember on Friday we spoke with David Payne, who's the co-founder of the 9/11 National Day of Service. And if you weren't out and about over the weekend, this is something that Utah does better than, I think, any state in the nation. And we talked about that day of service. And for so many, they did it on Saturday this year, rolling through the weekend, leading into today. And David talked about it in terms of what he thought about post 9/11 and what it is that can actually continue to unite the nation today.
We weren't red states or blue states. We were just human beings helping one another. And I think it awakened me to the realization that, that while we may not agree on a lot of things, we are all, fundamentally kind, decent, compassionate people that care about one another. And maybe that ought to be the legacy that we pass on for generations to come.
So many important things to reflect on, and I'll circle it full to where we began. That which we forget, our children are not likely to know, and what our children do not know, our grandchildren are not likely to possess. And the lessons from 9/11, many of our children, young people, have no recollection of the day. And it's up to us to not just talk about it, to not just say, oh, I was here or I remember this, but to talk about the principles that drive it all. The principles that united the nation after 9/11, gratitude, solidarity, and grief and grace, commending and commemorating the memory of those who were heroic on that day, and beyond even just those first responders running in. There were so many people around the country who looked out and made a difference that day. And that's something that we're still charged to do with if we're going to properly remember, because remembering is really about doing and creating a better future tomorrow based on the principles that we learned that day.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. It's about to get real for the BYU Cougars.
To the end zone, touchdown!
This Saturday, the Cougs take on Arkansas from the Powerhouse SEC Conference. Here's how to get ready. First, listen to Cougar Nation take your calls Monday at 6. Also, subscribe for BYU updates by texting the letters BYU to 57500. And then tune in for our special extended pregame coverage. Saturday starting at noon. We're Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
As the weather turns colder, this is when you need to get those new windows. So call Advanced Window Products. They'll replace your single-pane, rickety old windows with stylish, state-of-the-art double-pane windows with precision frames. You pick the style and color. They're custom-made right here in Salt Lake City. This company is so Utah. It's run by two guys who grew up here, Jake Weber and Utes defensive star Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sacktown with 7 NFL seasons under his belt. Great guys, great company building high-quality windows for 37 years. Unlike other companies, they build the windows. They install the windows and they guarantee them for life. No middleman. There's Jake, Nate, and their team, and there's you. Saving on the highest quality windows. Right now, before winter, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more, and they offer 60 months, 0% financing. So call Advanced Window Products now. You could have stylish new windows in 8 weeks. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
At Shields, we know good things happen when preparation meets opportunity, which means during the season, the only element of the hunt we can actually control is the work we put in and the gear we trust. So stop by the Shields sale event September 9th through the 17th and save on brands you can trust, like Sitka, Lucky Duck, Benelli, and select Shields Outfitters gear. Our Shields experts are ready to prepare you for success on your next upland and waterfowl adventure. Shields. Earn your moment.
The Utah RV Super Show, the premier RV event of the year, is back at Mountain America Expo, Thursday, September 14th through Sunday, September 17th. Come see the new 2024 models and special closeout pricing on all 2023 models. Bring a can of food for the Utah Food Bank and get $1 off per can, up to half off adult admission. Unplug from distractions and plug into your family at the Utah RV Super Show. Discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Dave and Dujanovic.
I want listeners to feel like they want to share this conversation at the dinner table.
I want listeners to feel informed, more informed than when they joined the show, and they're more in the know than they've ever been before.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Salt Lake City police have arrested 8 people as part of a gang investigation. They say the gang could be linked to as many as 15 shootings. Second, the governor of New Mexico has imposed a ban on carrying guns in Albuquerque. It could make a statement even if it doesn't pass constitutional muster. Third, Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, on his way to Moscow to meet with Vladimir Putin. The Russian leader expected to announce Kim for weapons to keep up his war with Ukraine. Right now, 81 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
President Biden's re-election campaign, as well as super PACs backing the president, are launching full-on ad blitzes. The president's been struggling, of course, in the polls of late. His approval rating continuing to drop around 39% in the latest CNN poll. So the question is, what are these ads all about? What do they hope to do? Will they be effective and helpful in giving a little boost to the president as we roll into the fall? And as we try to look behind the headlines of it all, Leanne Caldwell, of course, is the co-author of the Washington Post's Early 202, an anchor for Washington Post Live. And Leanne, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
So let's dive into this a little bit. For some, this seems a little bit early in the game for this kind of ad strategy, but tell us what you're seeing, what you're sensing.
Well, it is a little bit early historically. Donald Trump his campaign didn't go on the airwaves until October, I believe it was, toward the end of October. Barack Obama at this stage didn't go on the campaign or go on the airwaves by his campaign for many months later. And so it is a little bit early for President Biden to start using the airwaves as a means to speak to voters. But they're doing that because he does have a favorability problem. He does have an approval rating problem. You mentioned at the top that, he's in the high 30s of favorability. And so they're trying to boost that among general audience voters before the real campaign starts for President Biden as the Republicans continue to hammer out their primary.
Yeah, and so let's look at some of the things that you all pointed out with you and your tag team partners there at the Post. It kind of broke down some of the areas of concern. There's not a lot of inspired confidence going on, and concerns about age, physical, mental health of the president, and so on. So give us kind of a breakdown in terms of what these ads will do to kind of counter some of that message that is seeping into the kind of the daily conversation in terms of the president, and how that might shift that conversation.
Yeah, so that's a lot of what these ads are for. I mean, the biggest criticism and concern around President Biden is his age. You see that from voters, independent voters. You see that from Democratic voters, too. And that's a big reason why the campaign is going early and going pretty big. They're focusing on swing states because, of course, that's where it matters. But they're running ads that make President Biden look strong, that he has a lot of stamina, to try to cut into that perception that he is too old to run for re-election. One of the ads that has been running is an ad about him entering into a war zone to see Ukrainian President Zelensky. It talks about the 9-hour train trip in the middle of the night that he has to take to kind of sneak into the president to meet with the Zelensky as a war is going on around him. And so those are attempts to project strength of President Biden. And this is a multi-million-dollar effort, and they think that it's necessary, especially as this is often one of the top things that Republicans hammer President Biden about over and over again. They see the polling too, and they know that his age is a huge vulnerability for him. And so that's what the Biden campaign is trying to contradict.
So give us some perspective in terms of the dollars and cents. How big? Sometimes you'll see little teaser, ad buys where they'll kind of message test in some of those swing states. So this is a pretty significant chunk of change going, and give us a sense of that.
It is a significant chunk of change. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes they'll tout, six-figure or low $1 million ad campaigans in some of these swing states. But this is a $25 million ad buy, and it's also significant because, or I shouldn't say ad buy, a $25 million campaign at this stage that's going to run for several weeks. But it's also significant because the campaign has actually only raised about $23 million. Of course, there's many different entities, and it's still early on. It's not a campaign year, and they're not really worried about the money too much at this point. But they are kind of going into a little bit of debt here to get these ads on the airwaves and kind of blanket these swing state voters with this new projected image that they want them to view President Biden.
Yeah, and as they look at crafting that message, you described some of the messages that are out there in terms of him going into Ukraine. Again, that's a big show of strength there. Some of the things around increasing jobs, the economy, some of the legislative wins there. You kind of compared and contrasted a little bit. Former President Obama was definitely the one always speaking to camera. This appears to be much more of a narrative kind of focus.
It is a narrative, which is really interesting, why they're doing that. And it's a lot of small vignettes of Biden really looking his best. And they're meant to be inspiring, and they're meant to, tell a story about the president. There's a piece a component where he's speaking to Congress and a very strong voice, and so it is different. It's a different style, and I'm kind of beating around the bush here, but the president is old, and people do. While there doesn't seem to be any problems with his, with his ability to do the job, he is very active on the camp. Or he is active in his job. But the fact is that the perception is out there that he is. I talk to non-political friends all the time, and that's the number one thing that they say about it. And so they're doing what they can to kind of use a Hollywood cinema type of ability in order to ensure that Biden looks his best.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see how this all plays out. And anyone who doesn't think the president is doing some heavy lifting on the energy front, just try to fly to India, then to Vietnam, back through Alaska. Just try that on your own.
Right.
It'll challenge a 20-year-old.
I don't want to be president. That's half the date. Yeah.
Exactly. Last question before I let you go, Leanne. This is also insightful. One of the things that I've been kind of tracking, again, just on the dollars and cents of it, is so intriguing to me. And usually with an incumbent president, this is like the season where you just get to pop popcorn and watch the opposing party just waste a lot of money fighting and beating up on each other, and you can just continue to kind of corral your cash and get ready for the general. But this is clearly an investment, a little bit of a gamble in terms of spending, knowing that the Republicans are all going to have to continue to spend just to get the nomination. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And then you have someone from the Trump campaign that we highlight who says, well, President Biden obviously knows it's a problem if he already has to be spending. But most of the Democratic operatives in the piece say that it is necessary. It's actually something that he should be doing. He cannot sit by and assume that this is going to be an easy campaign, even if the former president, Donald Trump, is the Republican nominee. You saw a series of polls last week. CNN did a head-to-head matchup against Biden and all of the Republican challengers, and he's within the margin of error of all of them, if not losing by a point or two. Now, of course, that's a national poll. Of course, it's a hypothetical, but it does raise some concerns within the Democratic Party, and most people I talk to say that the Biden campaign should absolutely be aggressive on this front.
Yeah. Great insight as always. Leanne Caldwell, co-author of the Washington Post Early 202 and an anchor for Washington Post Live. Leanne, thanks as always for great insight, great perspective.
Of course. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. When we come back, we're going to talk about cybersecurity for political campaigns. That's an important and increasingly important issue on the trail. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Doug Griffith, a Lehigh resident with 5 multi-state DUI arrests over a year's time, has been sentenced to prison. Fourth District Judge Craig Powell delivered the sentence.
In case number 231400811, driving under the influence with 2 or more prior convictions within 10 years, a third-degree felony, the court sentences Mr. Griffith to serve 0 to 5 years in the Utah State Prison.
In addition to the maximum prison sentence for DUI, Griffith received a maximum fine of $5,000. He was also convicted of unlawfully installing a tracking device, which got him an additional year in prison. A head-on crash on Highway 6 near Sheep Creek on Sunday killed 1 person, seriously injured 2 others. Utah Highway Patrol says a passenger car drifted into the opposite lane and hit a minivan. The driver of the car, 46-year-old Benjamin Campbell, was killed. The driver of the minivan flown to a hospital and the passenger taken by ambulance. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A large hotel and casino company, especially in places like Las Vegas, is dealing with a computer security incident. ABC's Alex Stone has details.
It's not clear how extensive it is, but MGM Resorts confirms in a statement it identified a cybersecurity issue and that it has shut down certain systems and has notified law enforcement and cybersecurity experts. It says it's investigating. Some hotel and casino guests claim digital room keys aren't working and the MGM Resorts app has gone down.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, 88 points right now. The NASDAQ is up 173 points at this hour. And our KSL weather, sunshine today, a few clouds tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:32.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
It's time for you to go for the gold with our friends at Hercules Credit Union. Here's the deal. All you got to do is open a checking account with Hercules Credit Union and then just qualify for their gold tier checking status in the first 90 days, and Hercules will deposit $200 into your checking account. It's really simple. Not only that, you get all the benefits that come from being a gold tier checking member. And that includes all kinds of great things: cellular care coverage, travel benefits, health and wellness savings, the ultimate ID protection, making sure you don't have that identity theft, and all of that through Hercules Credit Union. So again, real simple. Go in anywhere. You can go into any of their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, or Salt Lake City. Open up a checking account, qualify for gold tier checking status in the first 90 days. $200 gets deposited into your account. Again, check out their locations in all of those places, or as always with Hercules Credit Union, check them out online. HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips that you plan in advance, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends for which you make a group chat 3 months before so that nobody or anything is missing. Or your daughter's first birthday party. You planned it with such dedication that instead of the first, it felt like our 15s. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Back to a quiet drive on the Valley freeways and our main secondaries. We do have the final cleanup of a crash. It may have involved a pedestrian 200 North, 1000 West. How do you know if you're getting the best deal on employee benefits? Well, you don't, unless you get free quotes from every insurance company every year. Visit shopmyplan.com to get free quotes. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, mostly sunny today with clouds moving in tomorrow and a chance of thunderstorms on Wednesday. Today's high 87, tomorrow 82. Right now, 83 degrees and sunny at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As we've often talked about on this show, political campaigns mainly run on two things: dollars and data. Getting those and keeping those often is the difference between winning and losing in a political campaign. We just talked about how much money President Biden is spending very early in the process on campaign ads and a marketing push. And, of course, in the context of all of that, they're going to be trying to collect data. Now, the interesting thing, and I've seen a lot of political campaigns, most of these campaign operations run in a pretty high-risk kind of way. There's not a lot of sophistication to this, and that makes them very vulnerable to being hacked or to be targeted for cybersecurity. And so we wanted to get into how widespread is the problem, what does that look like in terms of campaigns, and how do we actually solve that? Because when you think about it, this impacts you too. If you vote, if you donate, if you follow folks that are running for office, all up and down the scale, all of that has an impact on you and your data. Really thrilled to have joining us on the program today Michael Kaiser is the president and CEO of Defending Digital Campaigns. It's a nonprofit, works to bring cybersecurity products to political candidates and campaigns, and this is an important one. And Michael, thanks for making time for us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me in. I appreciate it.
So let's dive into this. A lot of people don't think about cybersecurity and hacking when it comes to political campaigns, but we saw just recently the website for former President Donald Trump's Legal Defense Fund appeared to be hacked. Give us kind of a lay of the land as you look out across the country. What is the state of kind of that data protection when it comes to campaigns?
Yeah, campaigns, you already, in your intro, you alluded to this. Campaigns are interesting enterprises when it comes to cybersecurity. I call them squishy perimeter, right? They're very small, most of them. They're, have people coming in and out. It's not easy to define everybody that's associated with a campaign. Could be family members of the candidate, friends of the candidate, doing fundraising, volunteers, maybe a few core staff. And so they're extremely vulnerable because of all these potential entry points into these campaigns, but they're also targets too, right? Because campaigns have you also alluded to this, the money, right? Well, campaigns have been subject to cyber criminals. We saw that in the last cycle, a senator who was, got money stolen from his campaign, right? We see those kinds of things. They're subject to other kinds of bad actors. So their campaigns are vulnerable. And they don't focus on these issues very strongly.
Yeah, that is it is a focus issue to be sure. And I think your assessment that there's squishy perimeters is quite generous. Most campaigns I've seen are put together with duct tape and baling wire, and they are prime targets because, as you said, you have people coming and going. You got volunteers. You have people who have no sense in terms of that kind of security or sophistication. Many of them are just kind of gathering the people who think you might be able to win and jumping on board. And so tell me about your organization and how you're trying to help this, because I think this is a serious issue. I don't think we talk about this nearly enough.
Yeah, so we were actually founded. We are a nonpartisan, non-aligned organization, and we were founded by, folks on both sides of the aisle who felt that cybersecurity of campaigns was a serious problem. And they went to the Federal Elections Commission and they asked for an advisory opinion to allow companies to donate through Defending Digital Campaigns cybersecurity services directly, of course, in this case, only to federal campaigns that we're working on trying to get down ballot, directly to federal campaigns without those products and services having to be accounted for or reported on as contributions, which is actually kind of a big deal, right? Because it allows us to bring these services into campaigns for free in most cases without them having to think about spending the money. And as as I'm sure campaigns have one goal, which is winning, and any diversion of funds to anything that goes to anything but winning is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, that's right. And
so,
yeah, just not having the time or the focus. If it's like we're going to spend, wait, we just broke our backs to raise this amount of money, and so we can go, put an ad up on TV or on air. You want us to spend it on a back end, security software? You got to be kidding. And so tell us about the conversation you're having. And I love that you're nonpartisan. That you can go across the spectrum and say, look, these are just best practices. Here's the stuff you need to have in place.
Yeah, so we talk to a lot of campaigns directly, and what we really focus on are the basics in cybersecurity. A lot of campaigns are resting on platforms like Google Workspace or Microsoft Office, which actually have a lot of security in them already. So we try to help campaigns to make sure they're getting the most security out of the platforms that they're using. And then to add on a few really critical things, I think, we really emphasize using, what we call security keys, which many of your viewers may be aware of. It's actually a little physical device you plug into your computer. We give those away for free. We have extended website protections for free. We have password managers. So we focus on getting these core things in place because account access, trying to get into an account, to either, create a phishing campaign or to steal contact lists or, maybe to get into a website in order to deface it. You raised the recent issue on the fundraising site for President Trump. These are real things that people try and do. So we try to harden those entry points into the campaigns. We can't expect them to treat security the same way we would, a mid-size or a large company would. They have to focus on the vulnerability, which is going to be accounts and people, and that's what we try to protect.
Yeah. Okay. That's so important. And so, how do campaigns? I want to talk about campaigns first. How do campaigns get a hold of you? How do they make that connection? Because to me, this is part of good strategy from a campaign standpoint. Is you got to make sure you're secure for your data and for your dollars. How do they go about that?
Yeah. So it's pretty easy. Like I said, right now we're federal campaigns. House, Senate. Presidential races and also state parties and, national committees. They can just email us at info@defendcampaigns.org and just say that, what their race is, and we'll double check their eligibility and we'll reach out to them. And then we don't just send them product, right? Because that wouldn't work that well either. So we actually have onboarding support. So we have someone who will hop on a call with them. We try to make it quick. We go through what they're doing. We go through what we have. We then send them information. We send them the products, and we'll follow up if they need a little training, if they need some hand-holding to get it working. We'll absolutely do that with them because it's really important that they get the product, but it's more important that they turn it on. That's also an issue.
Exactly. And keep it on, right? And actually keep it on.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, for those who are supporting campaigns or donating to campaigns or signing up for the newsletter from the campaign, what should they be thinking about in terms of the security of their data?
Yeah, well, this is a data-rich environment. You already mentioned that, and data drives a big part of the political process. There's only a few things they can do. One is they can have their own security in place, right? So they're making sure they're using strong authentication, multi-factor authentication on their own accounts. And in fact, if they're using things like signing in with Apple or signing in with Google and those kinds of things, those are very strong. So if the donation site, if you have good security on your own end, and the site allows you to log in with those other services. That's one of the things I recommend people do because that's highly protective. Of course, we don't know all the security of all the vendors that we use, right? That's not something we check out usually in advance. But, the bigger vendors, that's one of the things we really focus on is ensuring that all the third-party services that campaigns use focus on security as well. Because that's where so much of the campaign activity occurs is actually not in the campaign itself, right? I don't know any campaigns that have their own email server anymore. That's a thing of the past, and that's good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But still, they have to have that connection with the third parties being secure too.
Fantastic. Great insight. Michael Kaiser is the president and CEO of Defending Digital Campaigns. This is the nonprofit. So it works to bring cybersecurity products to political candidates and campaigns. And again, it's dollars and it's data. And we often don't think about it, and we very rarely talk about it when it comes to campaigns. And this is a crucial thing, especially for campaigns in the 21st century. Michael, thanks so much for making time for us today. Great insight.
Well, thanks for having us in. We really appreciate it.
All right, that's Michael Kaiser, again, from Defending Digital Campaigns. And whether you are in a campaign or you're donating to one, these are all important security questions for your data. Really critical stuff. We'll step aside. More Inside Sources coming up next.
This autumn, fall for the KSL hosts who share this community with you and report on Utah's most important stories. Depend on Tim and Amanda, mornings from 5 to 9. Listen to David Dujanovic at 9, Boyd Matheson at 1, and Jeff Kaplan on the ride home from 3 to 7. We have you covered at KSL News Radio.
Hey, Derek Overstreet here from the New Millennium Group, financial advisors in Utah. I've been helping people retire in the state of Utah for the last 20 years. The way we do that is we actually find out what is important to you. We create a step-by-step plan that takes into consideration your income, your debt, whether you want money from real estate, stock market, annuities, life insurance, whatever. If you want to deal with professionals, people that are fiduciaries and have a legal responsibility and obligation to do what's in your best interest, give my team a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Or go to my website, utahsfinancialplanner.com. If you'd like to retire 3 to 5 years before you thought it was possible, give my team a call right now. 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370.
Is shopping for medical supplies online leaving you feeling intimidated and overwhelmed? Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent with Alpine Home Medical. I want to share a real customer story with you.
The moment I walked into Alpine, I felt cared for. They pulled me into a private room, and the Alpine professional happily set up my CPAP machine, explaining everything I needed to know. The service didn't stop there. After I went home, Alpine called me a week later just to check on me. These guys really are the experts. Before Alpine, I was so stressed trying to navigate what I needed online by myself, but all the stress went away when I went to their store. They really do deserve 5 stars.
We know when you walk through our doors, you deserve to be cared for. Stop by any of our 11 locations and discover the Alpine Home Medical difference. When you need assistance, we're here for you.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
AlpineHomeMedical.com.
Here's a question. Do you wear dentures? At Grandpa's Dental, you can trade in your floppy dentures and get $2,000 towards an implant-supported solution. You know, they say the older you get, the more you need your teeth. And chewing your food isn't a luxury. And taking a bite out of a nice, juicy steak, well, it takes teeth. At Grandpa's Dental, they have over 10,000 restorations under their belt, and it's always affordable. When you walk into one of their 3 locations, you're family, period. At Grandpa's Dental, they live their family legacy by building lasting relationships through state-of-the-art services. So if you want to stop the flop and actually eat foods you can chew, trade in your dentures at Grandpa's Dental for $2,000 toward your implant solution. Schedule your free consultation at grandpasdental.com today. That's grandpasdental.com.
Spend some time with the ones you love in one of the most unique dining experiences in Utah. Five All's Restaurant has 5 stars, 5 courses, and is a step back in time.
Join KSL News Radio's Jeff Kaplan on Thursday from 4 till 8 at the Mill Creek Business Market at Mill Creek Common. Join over 40 local businesses at the Mill Creek Business Market and enjoy fresh cut flowers, haircuts, Thai food, skincare products, henna tattoos, jewelry, dog treats and toys, boba, and more. There'll be skating, food trucks, and free twisted sugar drinks and cookies for the first 100 attendees. Courtesy of U.S. Bank. It's KSL in your community in Mill Creek with KSL News Radio.
Jeff Kaplan.
Well, I think it's obvious. My favorite news is what you hear in the minute every afternoon, an expression of what I'm actually energized about on any given day. My minute of news is just a moment to lift you up.
Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
This week's movie show brought to you by Sound Sleep Medical. Get a free sleep screening and a free sleep consultation by tuning in on Friday morning. Sound Sleep Medical with 7 locations in Utah.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a man from Lehigh sentenced to prison this morning after his 5th DUI. Second, a man was killed in a head-on collision on Highway 6 yesterday. And third, MGM hotels and casinos dealing with a cybersecurity incident. Among other problems, some hotel guests say their keys aren't working. 83 degrees and sunny right now in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
The idea that they would supply ammunition to Russia, well, it's predictable where that ends up. For both Russia and North Korea, this will further isolate them.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday in response to the news that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un would make his way to Moscow to meet with Vladimir Putin. The goal of the meeting, of course, strike an arms deal. Very clear on that. We spoke to Anthony Ruggiero from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies last week. And Anthony described for us the history between these two countries. And really interesting, he gave us really important perspective going into this meeting between Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin and what kind of pressure the U.S. should be putting on North Korea. So we started by asking Anthony very specifically, break it down in terms of where things stand with these countries.
Yeah, I mean, North Korea and Russia have had a long relationship, decades-long relationship, and recently, because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, North Korea has been helping them with exporting arms and related material to Russia. That has been going on for some time, at least back to November of last year. And now it looks like Kim, who has not really left North Korea since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, is going to make his first, exit from the country into Russia to talk to Putin directly about the relationship.
And so as you anticipate that, again, that's a significant move in and of itself, that he'll be leaving the country for the first time since the pandemic. Pretty reclusive regime there in North Korea. So the fact that he's leaving, that will clearly put him in the middle of the world stage, which, again, probably has some pluses and minuses for him back at home. But what does that mean for us here in the U.S. as this kind of plays out on the international stage?
Right. The administration, Biden administration has been talking about how, this is, desperation on the part of Russia and North Korea. I'm not sure it's desperation. I think these are two countries that are very close, have historically been very close with each other. And, for Kim, it's a target of opportunity. What he wants from Russia is he wants continued evasion of sanctions, which allows North Korea and Kim to continue their nuclear weapons and missile programs, and probably wants, something in his back pocket in the future if he needs Putin's help. And Putin needs help with the Ukraine war. He needs these weapons in order to continue that.
Yeah, and I know that Jake Sullivan told reporters today that they've continued to squeeze Russia's defense industrial base, and so now they're looking elsewhere for some of those sources. Give us some sense in terms of what is the capacity that North Korea has to really supply Russia, and what does that do to the dynamics on the ground as it relates to Ukraine?
That's right. I mean, I think that North Korea has, a variety of weapon systems that they can offer, whether it's just artillery or ammunition. And, last month the Russian defense minister went to North Korea, which was an interesting trip in of itself. And as part of that, he watched the parade, but even more important, Kim escorted him around a defense expo. So basically showing off, here are the things you can buy from North Korea. And you noted, Sullivan has talked about, and we talked about the desperation on either side, but, the administration's approach is really trying to, I've termed it, shame North Korea into stopping this transaction. Sullivan said that North Korea would pay a price for this in the international community. To my mind, that's the wrong approach. Kim does not really care about what people think of what he's doing. The only real response, in my view, is pressure. Kim responds to pressure. If we can eliminate or reduce his revenue that's going in, then he won't have the luxury of really helping Russia. And then in the end, we'll be able to impact the war on the ground in Ukraine.
Yeah, unpack that a little more for us in terms of the pressure. What are the other pressure points beyond just, as you said, just the threat that they will pay a price? What are some of those other pressure points that the U.S. could apply that might discourage Kim Jong-un?
Right, and this is where our unfortunate failed North Korea policy comes into play. The fact that really since 2018, sanctions have atrophied, and we need to get back to that. For Kim, it's really about 4 strategic priorities: his nuclear weapons, his ballistic missiles, the North Korean elites, and the military. And he judges everything based on how that will help him. And so for right now, he feels pretty secure that he can get the revenue for all 4 of those, and then he can add on top of that helping out Putin. If the United States started to go after his revenue, particularly in China and Russia, and made him think again, oh, well, maybe I'm not going to be able to do my 4 priorities that are key to my survival, then he'll start to think about, well, maybe I do need to pull back from Putin. For Kim, it's not about, someone standing behind the White House podium, sort of trying to shame him into stopping this. That's really not going to work. It's really never worked with the North Korean leaders.
Yeah, and it always seems that the primary goal is to make sure that they stay in power until they're no longer on the planet. And so describe for us a little bit, you mentioned, I think we tend to think about the nuclear program. We talk about the missiles program and the impact that has on the region. Talk to us about this area of the elites. What does that look like in North Korea? We know kind of what it means in terms of Russia, in terms of their elite group. What does it mean in North Korea?
Right, and the North Koreans have different classes that they categorize people in, and the top class, the core class, or the elites is an easier way to say it, are people who support the regime, and part of that is because they're not subjected to what everyday North Korean citizens are subjected to in terms of the lack of food rations and the possibility of being sent to political prison camps. And if you're in the elites, it's sort of a two-way street. North Korea regime, including Kim, provides certain luxuries that others in the country do not have, and then in exchange, you support the regime itself. And so, that relies on Kim and his cronies really being able to have a free-flowing money going back and forth. They send overseas laborers, which they get hundreds of millions of dollars for. They sell coal, which they get millions of dollars for as well. And we all know about their cyber activities, which they get billions of dollars for. And all of those are the way they generate the revenue. And they're not using that revenue for the North Korean people. They are using that revenue in order to perpetuate this system that Kim has put, and his father and his grandfather have put in place.
Yeah, and then final question for you, as it relates to both Russia and China, I think it's interesting that they have been really trying to flex their muscle around the world in interesting places, not just militarily, not just economically, even diplomatically. They've been leaning into different places in the Middle East and in Africa. What does this current round with Russia and North Korea What is the message they're sending to the U.S.? And then, again, how do we respond knowing that things might be a little different than maybe it was a few decades ago?
Both countries, China and Russia have, voted for these UN sanctions that they're supposed to be implementing. And, what we've seen over the last few years is that, the secret that everyone didn't really talk about, but now we talk about openly, is that they are violating those sanctions very clearly. And part of the reason why, in particular, Chinese banks and at some level Russian banks and individuals and entities and companies can do this is because we have, the United States made a decision somewhere along the line that we would not implement our own sanctions. And, when we have done that, Chinese banks responded and actually started scrutinizing transactions and squeezing North Korea because in the end, particularly with China, these banks want their access to the U.S. financial system. They're not going to choose North Korea over access to the U.S. financial system.
Important conversation. We're going to continue to track that very closely as these meetings take place with Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. Stay with us. Hour number 2 of Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be back after top of the hour news.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen on the KSL News Radio app and in your car at 102.7 FM. KSL News Radio, your all-day companion for news.
It's 1 o'clock at KSL News. It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Students at 12 schools in the Salt Lake City School District will get free breakfast and lunch all year long. This is under a federal program that looked at how many families were already using other government assistance.
We're really, really excited that these 12 schools qualify without having to apply for the free and reduced meals.
That's spokesperson Yandere Chatwin with the school district, who says they still want families not at these 12 schools to apply for free school lunch. He says a majority of their students would qualify. Students are split down the middle about whether to consider a third-party candidate for the White House. A new poll from the Deseret News and the Hinckley Institute shows slightly more Utah voters would consider voting for an independent than not. And this comes as the national nonprofit No Labels considers running a third-party ticket. Donald Trump and Joe Biden are currently, of course, the main party frontrunners. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. An impeachment inquiry against President Biden is one of the conditions that some conservative Republicans are demanding as the House looks at the upcoming deadline for funding the federal government. ABC News national correspondent Stephen Portnoy has more.
While anything can happen quickly when congressional leaders can point to bipartisan support, that's lacking at the moment, and there's not a lot of time to pass a measure that avoids a government shutdown at the end of the month. Some House Republicans are demanding that Speaker Kevin McCarthy agree to their demands for sharp spending cuts and an impeachment inquiry into the president. If McCarthy doesn't agree, those conservatives could force the House into a fight over his speakership.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, 88 points, and the NASDAQ up strongly, 156 points at this hour. And our KSL weather looks like sunshine today, clouds tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time 2:02.
Early mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips that you plan in advance, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends for which you make a group chat 3 months before so that nobody or anything is missing? Or your daughter's first birthday party. You planned it with such dedication that instead of the first, it felt like our 15s. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
As the weather turns colder, this is when you need to get those new windows. So call Advanced Window Products. They'll replace your single-pane, rickety old windows with stylish, state-of-the-art double-pane windows with precision frames. You pick the style and color. They're custom-made right here in Salt Lake City. This company is so Utah. It's run by two guys who grew up here, Jake Weber and Utes defensive star Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sacktown with 7 NFL seasons under his belt. Great guys, great company building high-quality windows for 37 years. Unlike other companies, they build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. No middleman. There's Jake, Nate, and their team, and there's you. Saving on the highest quality windows. Right now, before winter, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more, and they offer 60 months, 0% financing. So call Advanced Window Products now. You could have stylish new windows in 8 weeks. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
Looks like crews have just wrapped up an accident on the 21st South Freeway westbound at about 900 West, but they're also working to clear a crash in Utah County. This is on Highway 6, and it's going to be on Highway 6 near the Highway 89 junction in Spanish Fork. Really isn't causing too much of a problem. The Utah RV Super Show at Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy, September 14th through 17th. Get information and discount passes at UtahRVSupershow.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, mostly sunny today with clouds moving in tomorrow and a chance of thunderstorms on Wednesday. High today 87, up only to 82 or so tomorrow. 84 degrees right now under sunny skies at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson.
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Of course, the headlines from 22 years ago today, 9/11, terrorists flew planes into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, a field in Pennsylvania. Emotional, tragic days, and much went on. And we want to get past the headlines. We've talked about a lot of the things that did take place on that day. We've talked about a lot of the heroes and many of the things that we remember from that day. But let's get past the headlines, because one thing we often miss in all of this is we read the report, but what about the reporters and journalists? We talk about the stories, but what about the storytellers? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
And getting beyond the headlines and thinking again a little bit about 9/11, we do want to talk about those reports we read and the reporters that actually wrote them, the stories that have become part of our society and part of culture and lore. And the storytellers who went out and tracked them down and gave voice to them. And we're really pleased to have joining us on the program today Mark Fisher, senior editor of The Washington Post, writes on a wide range of issues, has been with The Washington Post for over 30 years now. And Mark, thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be with you.
So let's start with just a little bit of your perspective on the day. We know what those newsrooms are like on a typical day. What was it like there at The Washington Post?
It was a very strange day. It was, in some ways, a very normal day. We gear up for big news stories, and everybody gets to the office and gets working. But this was something extraordinary. And for me, it was a day of a very strange silence that began out on the streets. As I made my way into work that day, came in early as soon as I heard the news that something was terribly amiss in Lower Manhattan, and then, of course, at the Pentagon. And so I rushed downtown as quickly as I could, and I was a columnist at the time, and so I was out on the street interviewing people, and downtown Washington was frozen in silence. It was just people were pouring out of the office buildings onto the streets. Traffic was completely tied up, and everyone was shuffling along, essentially preparing to walk home, no matter how far away they lived, and stunned in silence. And so I from there, I went right into the newsroom, and it was the same scene. And people were coming in, even people who had nothing to do with covering this story. Everyone felt they needed to be there to help out. And the place that's normally a buzz with laughter and bad jokes and so on was silent, and all you heard was typing.
Yeah.
People were they didn't know what to say, didn't know what to feel. They just knew we were in trouble.
Yeah, such a perfect perspective there rolling into that. And I actually want to go to the first piece that you wrote from that day with a very powerful headline, "Coddled No More, a Stunned Silence on the Street of Washington." Give us the perspective on that.
Yeah, it was one of the things I realized as soon as I started talking to people on the streets. And I was, the Post at the time was, our newsroom was about 3 blocks from the White House. And so I was kind of using that territory, which attracted both office workers and tourists, and just going up to talk to everybody as they were waiting for a bus or to hear from a loved one. And people were trading rumors. There were all kinds of wild rumors that morning. There was a rumor that the White House was under attack, that the Capitol was under attack. And so there was tremendous fear. And when people are afraid, they get kind of good with each other. I mean, people were being incredibly friendly. People were offering strangers rides home. People were offering to walk with people who had trouble walking, and it was exactly what you would hope to see from people. But behind all of that was a fear, and there was a cluster of people on a street corner. I went over there to see what was going on, and it was a bunch of office workers who were talking to tourists from Israel, and they were kind of grilling them about, you guys have been through this before. You go through this all the time living in Jerusalem. And they wanted to know, the people on the street wanted to know, what is it like to live with this? Are we now going to have to be like you and live with this kind of fear and terror every day? And what does that do to you as a human being? And so there was this very almost philosophical conversation going on in the street in the middle of people fleeing to get home. Very odd, but very moving.
Yeah, and such a powerful thing, and something that we, up until 9/11, we really did take for granted, that we didn't have those kind of worries like our counterparts living in Israel at the time. One of the interesting things that you pointed out was, one, just that silence, that quiet, that there wasn't panic and shouting, but just that quiet. Give us some perspective on that as you, again, kind of traverse the streets and talk to people on that day.
Yeah, it was really striking because I did expect people to be maybe a little more self-centered than usual, and just anything to get home, understandably, to their children, their loved ones, and yet people were instead taking their time and helping each other, and part of that was this. It was expressed through this silence. There were no shouts. When there were noises, everyone was startled together. There was a tire squeal on a street 1 block from my office, and the whole crowd of pedestrians jumped as if we were all connected to each other. And it was a weird mix of silent shuffle. You could hear people's shoes scraping against the sidewalk, and at the same time there was also noise of sirens and emergency vehicles rushing off in every direction as all of these reports, most of which turned out to be false, came in, getting the fire and ambulance folks to one end of downtown at the White House, and then the other end of downtown at the Capitol, and back and forth. And so there was just tremendous confusion, and everyone knew that the trains were shut down, the metro system was not operating properly, and the buses were not running, and so people just had to make their way through the gridlock of people coming out of the garages.
Wow. Fascinating perspective there. And as we march our way forward 22 years, I love that sense of interconnectedness, that even the reactions to noises and things is such an interesting and yet such a powerful and uniting thing in many ways. And so now, Mark, you're a keen observer of people, of society, of history. And now 22 years down the road, what's the lesson that you hope we're thinking about? What's the thing we're not talking about today, especially as it relates to, again, I go back to where we started. We read all the reports, but we didn't talk much about the reporters. We know the stories, but we don't always focus on the storytellers. What is it that we should be thinking about as we move all of this forward from today?
It's a great question, Boyd, and I think what's really going on that we don't talk enough about is the extent to which the fear, the insecurity of that day is with us even 22 years later. And a lot of what we're going through as a society, political division, economic turmoil, just a crisis of trust, all of that, I think, is very much traceable to that day. It was a shock to the system. It was a day when we learned that we're not as safe as we think we are. It was very much like Pearl Harbor that way. Pearl Harbor changed the American character and got everybody to come together and gear up for the war effort. And we were geared up for a few weeks after 9/11. If you remember that period where people wanted to just get out there and do something, and the cooperation and the togetherness was extraordinary. And then we never did anything with it. And instead, it's kind of festered, and it's led us to mistrust one another, to mistrust our institutions and authorities, experts, and so on. And you see this. The result is one of division and deep mistrust and lack of credibility for our key institutions. So I think a lot of that traces to 9/11, not all of it, obviously, but I think we don't talk about that nearly enough.
Fantastic perspective, as always. Mark Fisher, senior editor for the Washington Post. And Mark, we appreciate you joining us today. Some fantastic insight as how we actually move all of this forward. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Anytime. Thanks very much.
And that's Mark Fisher, senior editor of the Washington Post. And I think this idea of looking behind the headlines just a little bit, even on a day like 9/11, we know the headlines. We often recount the headlines, and we recount where we were when we heard the headlines. But there's so much underneath that. And one of the things that Mark said that is just resonating with me was how interconnected all of those people in Washington, D.C. were. Just shuffling down, that it was so quiet. You could hear the shuffling of the feet. When there was a loud noise, it was like they all reacted together. There was an interconnectedness that is powerful and palpable in those kinds of moments. And we need those kinds of moments of interconnectedness if we're actually going to get back to the kind of trust in ourselves, in each other, and in our institutions that will actually help us move everything forward.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. It's about to get real for the BYU Cougars.
Get to the end zone, touchdown!
This Saturday, the Cougs take on Arkansas from the powerhouse SEC Conference. Here's how to get ready. First, listen to Cougar Nation take your calls Monday at 6. Also, subscribe for BYU updates by texting the letters BYU to 57500. And then tune in for our special extended pregame coverage. Saturday starting at noon. We're Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
At Fisher Investments, we do things differently, and other money managers don't understand why.
Because our way works great for us.
But it may not work for your clients. That's why Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, obligated to put clients first. It's the highest standard for a financial advisor.
So, what do you provide? Cookie-cutter portfolios like the rest of us?
No cookie-cutter portfolios here. Fisher Investments tailors portfolios to meet each client's goals and needs.
But you do sell investments that earn you high commissions, right? And make commissions when you make trades for your clients?
No, Fisher Investments doesn't sell any commission investment products, and we never earn commissions on trades.
So what's in it for you?
Fisher Investments fees are structured so we do better when our clients do better. When it comes to helping clients achieve a comfortable retirement, we're clearly different. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments, clearly different money management.
Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. I want you to know that it's the little things that count. Any remodeler can say they treat customers right when it comes to siding, gutters, windows, and exteriors. It's hard to know for sure. If a contractor uses cheap generic nails instead of super grippy ridge shaft nails for your siding, would you even know? If they use cheap $4 caulk to install your new windows instead of paying $9 a tube for the good stuff, could you tell by looking? It all comes down to the details and trust. At RGS Exteriors, we only do things one way, the right way. We never cut corners. We never skimp on details. We never do less than the job requires. That's why we offer our industry's exclusive 10-year everything guarantee. And it's why we have the happiest customers. If you need any gutters, siding, or replacement windows, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsutah.com. That's 801-280-3110 or online at rgsutah.com.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, every student at a dozen schools in the Salt Lake City district will be getting free school lunch and breakfast. The district says students at many other schools would qualify if they applied. Second, would Utahns support a third-party candidate for president? The new poll suggests they just might. And third, Congress has a deadline of September 30th to fund the federal government. Some members are demanding an impeachment inquiry into President Biden at their price for cooperation. Right now, 84 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too.
Al-Anon
and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Breaking news on this Memorial Day of 9/11. We are going to go live now to Anchorage, Alaska. President Biden, returning from his trip to India and Vietnam, is about to give remarks on the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. He is currently being introduced by Chief Master Sergeant Amy Miller, who has a unique story, and then we'll go now live to President Joe Biden.
I wish I had him playing in my high school ball club when I was playing, but I could have been an All-American having you in front of me. No, Representative Mary, thank you for speaking, and the Mayor David Bronson and Major General Eifler, I really appreciate all you do, and Adjutant General Sachs and the tribal leaders and stewards of these sacred lands, and all service members and families at Joint Base Elmendorf Richardson and distinguished guests. I join you on this solemn day to renew our sacred vow: never forget, never forget. We never forget. Each of us, each of those precious lives stolen too soon when evil attacked. Ground Zero in New York, and I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell. It looked so devastating because from where you could stand. Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the Pentagon in Virginia. I spent many 9/11s in those hallowed grounds to bear witness and remember those we lost. Every day, but especially the last few days, their memory has been with me. I'm just returning from the G20 summit in India, where we strengthened America's leadership on the global stage, followed by a historic trip to Vietnam, where we transformed our partnership in one of the most critical regions in the world. These trips are an essential part of how we're going to ensure the United States is flanked by the broadest array of allies and partners who will stand with us and deter any threat to our security. To build a world that is safer for all of our children, something that today of all days we're reminded of is not a given. Because through this military base is located on Ground Zero, we know the distance did not dull or diminish the pain we felt all across the nation of September 11th. Because we know that on this day 22 years ago from this base, we're scrambled and high alert to escort planes through the airspace. Alaskan communities opened their doors to stranded passengers. American flags sold out in every store and were placed in front of seemingly every home. We know that on this day, every American's heart was wounded. Yet, every big city, small town, suburb, rural town, tribal community, American hands went up, ready to help where they could, ready to serve like so many of you here, ready like Chief Master Sergeant Shady Traylor, here with us today, who had recently started college when Flight 93 went down a few miles from Shanksville. She said, and I quote, "I immediately knew I wanted to sign up and suit up to serve my country." Ready like General Eifler, who said on that day, "When our nation calls, we must be ready." It called, and we went without hesitation. My fellow Americans, September 11th, 2001, tested our strength, our resolve, and our courage. The billowing smoke and ash that darkened the clear blue sky that September day. The shredded steel and concrete slabs that rained down from the World Trade Center. The plume of fire that shot up in the sky in Pentagon. I remember seeing as I got off the Amtrak train on my way to work in the United States Senate. The pit into the earth in Shanksville, a testament to the unbreakable courage and resolve of the American people. But we'll never forget that when faced with evil and an enemy who sought to tear us apart, we endured. We endured. But while every year we mark this hallowed day, it's never easy. To anyone here or anyone across the country who's grieving a lost child, parent, spouse, sibling, friend, or coworker, to all those who still bear the wounds from the searing September morning, I know how hard it is on a day like this. How can we reopen that wound? It's like opening a black hole in your chest, sucking you into it again, bringing you back to that moment when you saw the news, the moment you got that phone call, the moment you realized you'd never say again, "See you later, Mom," or "Talk to you soon, son." Think of everything your loved one might have done if they had a little more time. What would they have done? And though that can leave you so hollow, it also makes you full at the same time. On this day, I'm thinking about a friend of mine named Davis, who grew up with me in Delaware. 22 years ago, he and his family had just passed the first year without their youngest son of 3 sons, who died in a boating accident at age 15. His oldest son, Davis Jr., was just 6 days into a new job on the 104th floor of the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Davis went straight to ground zero to search for his son, searched deep into the last, as he referred to it, innings of hope, as he put it. A few days later, I called David to talk his fathers know about losing a piece of your soul. I was on my way to speak to students at the University of Delaware to try to make sense of what happened. And guess what? Having lost 2 sons within a year, Davis told me, "Just tell them, Joe, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." The terrorists stole 2,977 souls that day. 2,977 souls, forever altering the future of so many families and the story of our nation. But those terrorists could not touch what no force, no enemy, no day ever could, and that is the soul of America. What's the soul of America? It's the breath, the life, the essence of who we are. The soul is what makes us us. The soul of America is based on a sacred proposition that we're all created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. We haven't always lived up to it, but we've never walked away from that proposition either. The soul of America is the fortitude we found in the fear of that terrible September day.
You're listening to President Joe Biden in Anchorage, Alaska, marking the 22nd anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. We'll be right back. More Inside Sources coming up on KSL News Radio.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Some of the Utah National Guard members were already in Morocco for a training course when a deadly earthquake struck that North African country. They were 6 hours away from the main destruction, and they are ready to help if their rescue effort is needed. Lieutenant Colonel Marie Roberts told David Dujanovic they'll assist in whatever way they can.
Right now, our focus is on this exercise.
Okay.
We have all of the confidence in our Moroccan partners in how they're handling this and their ability to respond to this tragic event. So, of course, we're willing to assist however we can.
Governor Spencer Cox wrote on social media that Utah stands ready to help. Salt Lake City police say they've arrested 8 people as part of a gang investigation. The 7 adults and 1 juvenile are facing drug distribution and weapons charges. But police say the gang is suspected in as many as 15 shootings across the Salt Lake Valley, and officers say more arrests are possible. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: a large food brand getting bigger by swallowing another. ABC's Brian Clark has details.
Smucker's says its signed agreement to buy Hostess represents a sweet deal. The Ohio-based company is going to spend over $5.5 billion to buy the manufacturer of Twinkies. Smucker says the purchase accelerates its focus on convenient consumer occasions. It includes Hostess facilities in 6 states and Canada, and about 3,000 Hostess employees will join Smucker's. Brian Clark, ABC News.
Your money at this moment: the Dow Jones average up 87 points at the close of trading today. The NASDAQ was up 156 points. The S&P up 29. And our KSL weather: we could see a possible thunderstorm happening a little bit later this week. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:32.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Happy 62nd birthday, Granddad.
Thanks, sweetheart.
I got you this.
A mug. Oh, thank you. What does it say? Beware. If you are 60 or older, you may be at increased risk of hospitalization from RSV. Respiratory syncytial virus, compared to adults younger than 60.
Not all dangers come with warning labels. Talk to your pharmacist or doctor about getting vaccinated against RSV today. Learn more at bewareofrsv.com. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Imagine how inconvenient your life would be without power. No lights, no refrigeration, no heating or cooling, and no electronics. But with a Generac home standby generator, you'll have the power when you need it most. Generac generators automatically provide backup after sensing a power outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Schedule a free quote today with Genco Generators, your premier Generac service dealer in Utah. Call 801-295-0872 or online at gencogenerators.net.
Troy, I'm depressed. Bitches RV and American Fork is killing it.
What's depressing about that?
Stewart's RV managers and staff are still here, so we've got the same incredible customer service.
That's good.
And we brought in new RV brands like Ember RV and GoPlay Travel Trailers.
Also good.
And now you can shop hundreds more RVs at bitches.com.
Still waiting for the sad part.
I'm used to being a mentor, but I'm turning into a manatee.
You do have the same shape. Bish's RV is now open in American Fork. Come see us at the previous Stewart's RV or at our North Salt Lake location. Bish's RV, where memories begin.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, what are you waiting for? Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Ricky Meese.
We are looking at a crash-free, delay-free drive on the Valley freeways, but cleanup continues on a crash in Utah County on Highway 6. It's about a mile east of the Highway 89 junction in Spanish Fork. Autumn's in the air, the time when ghouls and boys should visit. This is the place. Little Haunts, the not-so-scary adventure with witches, storytelling, creepy crawly encounters, ponies, crafts, and more. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, mostly sunny today with clouds moving in tomorrow and a chance of thunderstorms on Wednesday. Today's high 87, tomorrow 82. And right now we're at 84 degrees under sunny skies at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Your all-day companion for news.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, over the weekend, I had the opportunity to interview one of our favorite guests, President Astrid Tuminez, president of Utah Valley University, on Sunday edition for KSL TV. And we got a little bit of a state of the state as it relates to the university, back in class, back on campus. And so I want to share with you some of my conversation with President Tuminez as we take a look at getting back to school, getting back on campus, and what's happening and what's going on there. Education is such an important part of who we are and what we do here in the state of Utah. Utah's higher education across the board continues to be a big part of that and to really be a leader in so many places. So I began the conversation. I asked President Tuminez about how things are going in the new semester. Here's how she framed it.
Utah Valley University is in a great place. We just started fall semester 2.5 weeks ago. We anticipate roughly around 45,000 students when the official count is out. 38% of our students are first in their families to attempt a college degree. 83% are working while going to school, and 20% are students of color. So we are just excited that they're at the university, ready to learn.
Yeah, and part of your mission and your mantra has been about this transformational change and what the future of higher education should look like. Give us that vision.
So the vision begins, I think, with exceptional care for all who want to access a college education. What we know about the model of higher education is that it's been traditionally used to weed out the riffraff. So you can't get in if you have a bad ACT or SAT score. You can't get in if you failed high school. It begins with this vision that we want everybody to have access. And then when they are in, we give them the support. It's a surround sound system of support from academic tutoring, support for minorities, all sorts of things that help students succeed in a very engaging experience at the university.
Yeah, so that care is the first component to that. What else do we have to do to really transform? Everyone has been talking a lot about higher education, and it's an outdated model. It doesn't quite fit. How do you do that, and how do you connect with businesses to make sure you're meeting the needs of future employers?
Yes, so I think the key word for Utah Valley University is relevance. If we are not relevant to the community and to the businesses and industry, we would be failing as a university. So we have many programs on campus, and maybe one of the ones that I could mention today is we just launched a Jobs CEO Council. And what that means is we canvassed CEOs of some of the largest employers in Utah County, and we connected with their executives to see what skills are missing when they interview people to begin working for them. And so we are working on many programs that will benefit them and benefit us, ranging from curriculum optimization so that we have students ready to be interviewed for internships, faculty externships, so our faculty can be in industry for the summer, for example, and return to the classroom with ideas from the world of practice. We're also offering them concierge services for their employees who want to go back to college.
Oh, I love that. And really getting that tailored approach. Again, you mentioned a lot of your students are working, they are engaged, some are coming back to pick up additional education. What else is Utah Valley University doing to really create that space for really a wide range of learners?
Yes, so you know we have 30% of our students are 25 years and older. And just in the state of Utah, there's a fairly large population, I think several 100,000, who have some college and no degree. So when we think about lifelong learning, we want to open that path to everybody. And it's actually really intensive work. We have phoned or emailed tens of thousands of people, and some have returned. We offer scholarships, we offer support so that they don't feel out of place when they return to the classroom. We have many, again, non-traditional students who, you know, they've raised children, they want to return, or they lost a job, and now they want to reskill or upskill. It is so important that they feel that they belong, that they are worthy to be in the university, and that this universe of learning is really open to them.
Yeah. One of the things that you brought to the table, and I can't believe it's been 5 years since you started this grand adventure. I know it wasn't on your radar coming in.
I fewer wrinkles 5 years ago.
We're glad you landed here. Tell us about some of the innovation. Obviously, you went through the pandemic years. What were some of the positive learnings out of that? How does that impact the way you approach really that constant learning, that forever learning that you're really trying to create that culture around?
Yes. So I think one of the first things that we did even before the pandemic hit was we hired a vice president for digital transformation. What digital transformation means is you have to meet students where they are. So the offerings are face-to-face as well as online. But when you do it online, you have to make it very engaging. And so COVID is only the starting point. A lot of online education is passive. So we are working on more engaged ways to use these technological tools. We launched a student app, which took a lot of investment, because when I arrived, students were saying, oh, we hate the app. We download it and delete it in 2 hours. So we now have a much more exciting app where students can learn about jobs, when to pay tuition, when to enroll, when to drop classes. And then maybe the third innovation I'll talk about is something that we call Excellence and Innovation Initiative at UVU. And it's all about project-based learning. When you are open admission and your student body is so diverse, you have to give everybody a chance to learn hands-on, using a project that they're passionate about with mentors who are faculty and private sector or industry players.
So important. So important. I'm going to sneak in one last question before we take a quick break. We always talk about the grittiness of the students at Utah Valley. Just give us a quick 1 minute look at what does that look like from your office?
So grit is something that we're very proud of at UVU, and in part that is driven again by the fact that some people come and they feel like they're not worthy of this experience or getting a college degree. So whether it's with our student athletes or students who've come, survived cancer, or students who had eating disorders, or students who have never felt or were told in high school that they shouldn't even try college. These are the students whose success stories we tell. We have a series called Wolverine Stories, and we tell all their stories because that has a reverberation that is like magic on our campus.
That's a portion of my conversation with Utah Valley University President Astrid Tuminez that aired on KSL TV on Sunday edition. And you can check that, of course, at ksltv.com. But I want to stay with this conversation. There were so many important moments in my conversation with President Tuminez. She always has such fascinating insight. But we got into this area that I just love and how Utah Valley University is taking learning beyond the classroom and into the wider world. Take a listen.
The largest college at UVU is actually the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. And today we may hear a lot of disparagement about the humanities and social sciences. But we know that higher education helps us not only to be prepared for the workforce, but also to be prepared for life. So our mission is to help students succeed for work and life, to help students become critical thinkers, to help them know how to pick up the newspaper, filter information, critique it. One of our initiatives that I'm most excited about is our civics literacy project. Democracy thrives when people have good information, can debate critically, but with compassion and joint purpose of preserving a democracy. So that's one of the things that I'm proudest of, that we are teaching our students to think critically and find their place, belong and be confident, find your place.
Yeah, that's so important to be part of that community and all of that ability to go beyond the headlines, to go beyond the clickbait kinds of things, engage in discussion, whether it's your focus on the Constitution, and it is Constitution Month and American Founding Month here in the state of Utah. We're talking a lot about that. But you understood this on the international stage as to why democracy is so important. And I love all of the things that you're doing down at Utah Valley as it relates to the Constitution, to civics, the Herbert Institute there as well. Give us some perspective there.
My perspective on being having traveled around the world. So, I've lived and worked in 5 different countries. I grew up in the Philippines during martial law, so I know how quickly democracy can die and you have an authoritarian dictatorship. I also lived in the former Soviet Union, so I sometimes joke that with all these concerns about communism, I always tell people I've actually lived in a communist system. And so what I appreciated about coming to America really was that democracy is a place of compromise. It thrives in the middle ground. And a university is the best place for that. We've had speakers that have been controversial for certain sectors of the population, and I've encouraged people to picket, to make your protest known, but do not cancel that person. Listen to them, because if there were a place for good debate and discourse and conversation, it is actually the university.
Yeah, I actually believe the university is a place that we have to count on for the country to reframe how we have a lot of those debates and a lot of those conversations. I want to talk a little bit more about the students at Utah Valley. We've talked a lot lately about mental health. I know it's been an important part of your presidency at Utah Valley University, is addressing some of the mental health challenges and support systems for your students.
Yeah, so mental health, these problems are an epidemic across the country. And what we've done at UVU is, first of all, make sure we have right on campus itself support services for students, whether that's one-on-one counseling or peer-to-peer counseling or group counseling. We will never have the resources we need to have the right ratio of full-time counselors to students who need help. But above and beyond the mental health counseling, we have a food pantry, we have a care hub where students can go practically for any need. Sometimes we've found that the only difference between a student staying and dropping out is $500. So we offer emergency scholarships and grants up to $500. We have an interfaith center. We have, an LDS Institute, because the majority of our students identify as Latter-day Saints. So we try to meet the needs in many different ways. 100 Students Club. Most important, though, is I think our ability to generate feelings of joy and community at UVU. That's the reason I walk around with green pom-poms, because I want people to feel that there is a joy to be had in life. And whether we are all, we disagree or agree, we are in this special place called a university. And mental health is the front lines, is also our professors. So we try to support the faculty in the difficult work they have to do. And I emphasize at UVU that it is all our jobs to look out for one another.
That's such an important part of that process. We've often talked about Utah as being a crossroads of the West. Increasingly, it's becoming a crossroads to the world. Utah Valley University has become part of that crossroads to the world. Just in our last minute, give us a little perspective from some of your colleagues from around the world and what they're starting to see and get excited about when it comes to Utah Valley University.
So, UVU has been a central partner for two of the largest United Nations conferences, that one on the Sustainable Development Goals that were conducted here in Utah. And this past summer, while on a short sabbatical in Singapore, I actually welcomed a Utah trade delegation to Singapore, and they went as well to Indonesia and Vietnam. So with UVU, we strive very hard to bring the world to Utah and to also bring our students and faculty to the world, because we have something to share in our model of education, whether that's study abroad programs or taking our leaders out to, especially Asia, I think, because Asia is so dynamic. And I think there is truth to the argument that this balance of global power is shifting to Asia, and we need to understand what the opportunities and challenges are. We had a massive summit on China. That was so exciting for me, where everybody from around the United States came to Utah Valley University. And it was astounding that we were able to have those kinds of dialogue with business and academics and journalists.
Yeah, Utah Valley's really become a convener. That's so important. Just last minute here. Give us one thing that you wish we were thinking about or talking about when it comes to higher education.
I wish that we would, first of all, what we should stop talking about. We should stop talking about how higher education is not necessary. That is such a harmful myth. Higher education is so necessary because any society that expects to compete and thrive must educate its people. The 21st century is a knowledge competition. It is a technological competition. It is a humanistic competition. Not just competition, but collaboration. And so I think we should continue to not only emphasize the advantages of higher education when it comes to earnings, family life, health, and a thriving democracy, but really do our best to let go of these notions that have become popular but are really harming those who need education the most.
More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio. Stick around.
At Intermountain Primary Children's Hospital, we made a bold promise to build the nation's model health system for children. Join us in realizing our vision for the future of pediatric care. So together, we can expand primary children's impact and ensure every child has access to the right care at the right place at the right time. For a century, Primary Children's has kept the child first and always. Help us continue to do so for the next 100 years. To get involved, visit primarypromise.org.
At Shields, we know good things happen when preparation meets opportunity, which means during the season, the only element of the hunt we can actually control is the work we put in and the gear we trust. So stop by the Shields sale event September 9th through the 17th and save on brands you can trust, like Sitka, Lucky Duck, Benelli, and select Shields Outfitters gear. Our Shields experts are ready to prepare you for success on your next upland and waterfowl adventure. Shields, earn your moment.
Introducing Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. We're bringing all of Utah's favorite HVAC, plumbing, and electrical brands under one roof. Call the pros at Yes and take $50 off any heating, cooling, plumbing, or electrical system repair over $200. Get fast relief and $50 off any repair from Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. The same great people providing the same great service that Utah has counted on for more than 45 years. Visit theyesmancan.com to schedule your appointment.
Hi, this is Doug Wright here with another experiment you can try at home regarding water. You can take 4 bags of water softener salt, lift 3 of the bags with one hand and 1 bag with your other hand. Yeah, I know. Now, if you're like most people, you'll probably find that 3 bags of salt weigh about 3 times as much as the 1 bag of salt. And that's an important thing to bear in mind when you're shopping for a water softener. You see, in our home, we have Kinetico, and the Kinetico water softeners are so well designed, they use only 1 bag of salt for every 3 bags that other water softeners use. Now, I can speak to this because we have had a Kinetico soft water system now in 2 different homes, and I'm not a fan of lifting those bags of salt. This is just one of the many reasons you really should look into Kinetico. Their number is 801-576-8000. 8600 or go to softwaterutah.com.
Get Mr. Max Performance Missionary Package. 1 performance suit, 4 and collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, and 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes. Just $595.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, members of the Utah National Guard who were in Morocco when a deadly earthquake hit are ready to help with relief efforts there. Second, 8 members of a gang suspected of drug trafficking have been arrested. Salt Lake City police say this gang may be connected to as many as 15 shooting incidents. And third, ho-hos, ding-dongs, snowballs, and Twinkies all now belong to Smuckers. Right now, 84 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson. And as we round out the show today, there's always great lessons in exciting beginnings and great endings. And so as we round out the show, we want to get to a couple of those that occurred over the weekend. One in particular that I thought was a really fascinating thing to watch. Coco Gauff was the winner at the U.S. Tennis Open, became the youngest women's champion, first teenager since Serena Williams. It was an amazing match to watch. She lost the first set in pretty bad fashion. It looked and appeared as though the Russian tennis player was just going to overpower her and just make very short work of Coco Gauff. But she gutted it out. She rallied. She worked it through and ultimately ended up winning that in the third set. So it was an amazing victory, an amazing setting there in New York, especially rolling into a day like today where we focus on 9/11 and the tragedies that happened in New York on that day. This was a stunning victory in New York over the weekend. And there was a few moments that were really interesting to me as it all played out. One was after she had secured the victory, she'd collapsed on the court, she'd gone over and shaken the hands of the judge and given a hug to her opponent. But Coco Gauff actually went over to her chair courtside and knelt down and prayed. And I thought it was a little interesting. The ESPN reporters did not acknowledge that she was praying, though it was very obvious and very clear that she was praying, and just said that she was soaking in the moment. And that was interesting. And so after the match, during the post-match press conference, Coco Gauff was asked about winning the U.S. Open and what her faith meant and played in all of that.
I feel like I'm a little bit in shock in this moment. That French Open loss was a heartbreak for me. But I realized, God puts you through tribulations and trials, and this makes this moment even more sweeter than I can imagine.
We saw you say a prayer, get on your knees. You have a lot of faith. How important has that been through this journey for you?
Oh, it's been so important. I don't pray for results. I just ask that, I get the strength to give it my all, and whatever happens, happens. I'm so blessed in this life, so I'm just thankful for this moment. I don't have any words for it, to be honest.
That was great poise from a teenager, talking about the fact that she doesn't pray for results. She doesn't say, hey, help me win. She just wants the strength to give it her all. And then, of course, giving gratitude and thanks. That's a really nice message and a really nice set of principles to learn from the tennis tournament over the weekend from Coco Gauff. Now, on the ending front, Chuck Todd signed off of NBC's Meet the Press for the last time yesterday. And here's what he had to say and some lessons in his farewell.
On my first day on the job at Meet the Press, I was handed an audience survey of Sunday show viewers. And the number one reason folks said they tuned in was not because of who the person was behind the chair or the guests. It was simply to get educated. So for nearly a decade, I've had the honor of helping to explain America to Washington and Washington to America, as Kristen just quoted me about. And it's that education piece that I'm hanging my hat on for the rest of my professional life. One thing we all lament lately, is the lack of knowledge and nuance in our politics and citizenship. That's a vacuum I hope to continue to fill.
So knowledge and nuance, I think that's an important thing that we are lacking in the country today. And as Chuck Todd signed off and for the last time said, if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press. I actually interviewed Chuck Todd on Sunday Edition not too long ago, and I actually want to go back to something he said about what he would change about news. Take a listen.
When they found out with the coverage of O.J. Simpson that you could make money on, quote, news, well, then news executives were forced to always find stuff that kept viewer interest. And if you're only covering what viewers are interested in, you are not going to inform the viewer well. And guess what? This is not a TV problem. Look at the most emailed story, the most read story. Why is that a metric? That should not be a metric for news. If I could get rid of one thing in every website in America, it would be the most read, most emailed.
Endings matter, and I think what Chuck Todd said as he closed things out, that was Chuck on our Sunday Edition show on KSL TV as he was getting ready to sign off for the last time. Get rid of that most read portion, most shared portion of news websites, because if that's what's driving us, it's driving us into the ditch. We would also note that Kristen Welker will take over the chair of Meet the Press this coming Sunday, and she will actually join us. We'll have an interview with her during the week this week. We'll air that on KSL TV coming up on Sunday, and, of course, we'll share that with you here on KSL News Radio on Monday of next week. And so there are always important lessons in endings and beginnings, and I think the lessons of a real breakout beginning for Coco Gauff, I think she's going to be around for a long time. She's very deeply grounded, very mature as a teenager, has some great perspective in terms of what matters and why it matters. And I think that'll help her sustain a level of excellence that should keep her in the conversation and in the middle of a lot of championships for the years to come. And Chuck Todd, I love the way he ended. I didn't always agree with Chuck Todd in terms of the politics of it or the way he was shaping a conversation, but he was always honest. It was always straightforward. And again, I think he got it right as he signed off. This is all about education. It's not about any personality. It's not any political party. It's just about educating Washington about America and America about Washington. And we'll keep doing that here as well. That wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on K.